Hi, Darcy. Welcome. Hi, Ruth. Welcome. Please feel free to say hello to me on this very special day in Australia. We have Anzac Day today.
You have what?
We have Anzac Day. It's a commemoration of all our servicemen and women that served in all wars. So today is a Memorial Day for us in Australia. I know it's the evening there in the US, but tell me, Darcy, how have you been, darling?
I've been good. I just came back from an acupuncture treatment and I fell asleep. So
Nice.
I'm
And
so relaxed.
are you happy to share about the full moon?
Oh, yeah. Yes. So, I mean, actually, I was looking at my Anito chart, and it turns out that yes, my LH kind of like hit like it looked like it was going to spike, but it went back down this morning. But my estrogen got higher, so I think it's going to come back up, right? Because the estrogen gets higher before the LH, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
on average, yeah, like estrogen peaks and then we ovulate. So you're in alignment with this beautiful full moon energy, darling. This is great. I love that you're aligned in this way. So welcome, Darcy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Tara. Would you like to unmute yourself, put your video on, say hello?
Hi, I'm just walking my dog quickly, and then I'm going to be inside so I could be at my computer. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Nice to meet you.
It looks beautiful and sunny over there.
Yeah, it's a little cool today, but it's nice and sunny.
Yeah.
We're moving into like the May gray June gloom is what they call it. I'm in Southern California,
Nice.
and so today the sun came out.
Yeah, well, welcome. Do you want to share anything about your journey so far?
Oh wow. There's lots to share, but the one thing that's kind of going on for me right now is my cycle is kind of confusing me this cycle. I'm on day 33 of my cycle, but it appears, and I'm not sure exactly, but it appears that I just ovulated like 2 days ago.
Really?
It's so I had gone to the doctor just for the fertility doctor for my consultation. I don't know if I'm going to be going going the route of IUI or timed, yet. I'm 44, so, I'm definitely, that's the odds are stacked against me. But I had gone in for my consultation and she did the transvaginal ultrasound and my follicle was like huge. And she's like, you either like just ovulated or like you're right now. And I'm like, wow. And so I got home and I checked myself and all the show, you know, soft, high, open. Am I ovulating like now, like this late in the cycle? And so I told my boyfriend, come home. It's just, so that's what's going on right now. I I don't know if that if that was the case. I don't know. Late. So I'm on day 33 right now.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of that before? Have you ever heard that happening?
Yeah, look, I've worked with a lot of complex cycles. So, our bodies are interesting how they can be delayed for certain things. It could be a sickness, it could be tonsillitis, there can be PCOS style factors at play. We call that phlegm, like a damp and phlegm accumulation from a Chinese medicine perspective. So I have all my patients doing BBT charting so that we can chart and we can actually see the patterns that are happening with your cycle. So I know you're tracking with your ovulation predictor kits, but perhaps download Fertility Friend, start doing some charting. Data.
I have, yeah.
Okay, great. By all means, put your
and I've also been trained with. Yes, the Zoom line must be a bad line. Yeah. I'm walking back into my house.
That's okay, no problem. Yeah, you keep breaking up. So what I recommend you do, perhaps. No problem. No problem. But welcome, Tara. We'll talk about this a bit later, and perhaps we can chat when we've got a better connection.
Yes.
Thank you
yes,
for joining. Thank you, darling.
I'm walking in my house right now, so I'm going to reconnect on a different device. It'll be better.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ruth, would you like to say hello? Would you like to unmute, put your video on, say hello to me?
Hello, doctor.
How
are you?
It's lovely to meet
You
you.
can tell I'm not in the time zone for being pregnant. I'm actually an OB nurse here
Great.
in Arizona,
Wonderful.
and my interest is in working with people with infertility. And so I actually just got your book and I started reading it. There's just a ton of good information in it, but I'm wanting to learn more about nutrition and how to help with that. And then also with essential oils that I work with. And I've also taken hypnotherapy through Marissa Peer, the rapid transformational therapy. And they have really good benefits for people working with infertility as well. So I want to kind of piece everything together and see if I can't start a business, with infertility. And so I'm just trying to learn everything I can. I know very little about the beginning of the pregnancy. I know the end, finishing it up. I'm a lactation consultant, doing childbirth classes for over 20 years. I know this end of it, but the beginning end is what I really need to learn about. But I do have an interest in it. And then following the clients through with the throughout the pregnancy. So
wonderful. So we're value adding to your toolkit, which is you're more than welcome to join us at any point. Join the groups. There's a lot of information, the downloads, and but yeah, Ruth, it's wonderful to have you on board. So
thank you. I really appreciate it. I appreciate learning from you.
Thank you, darling. All right, so I'm going to get started, everybody. And what I will encourage you to do is to stay till the end and we can have a little chat again, face to face. I'll get you to, unmute yourself, turn your video on, and that way you can ask me all your questions directly. I prefer if you just put your camera on because I'm a people person and I like talking face to face. I feed off your energy. I don't like looking at notes because I'm always on my computer. So I prefer face to face. We'll discuss everything at the end. So I'll state at the end. I'm going to make this as brief as I can. It's a big topic and it's something that all these topics are things that my patients are going through. And it's also topics that I'm particularly interested in. So things that spark my interest. And this one is a big one that sparked my interest because I'm just seeing so many more women coming into clinic and I wanted to just open up this conversation around egg freezing and the truth. And, I want you to understand what's behind it. A lot of the time it's sold as an insurance policy. So we're just going to start to do a bit of a deep dive into egg freezing and we'll see what we come up with at the end and see what questions you've got for me. So it's becoming more and more of like nearly every second person that comes into my clinic is asking me about egg freezing. And I would say in the last decade, from 2010, say to 2020, the data is showing that there's 1,000% increase in elective egg freezing. Don't you find that statistic fascinating? I certainly do. 1,000% increase. So that blows my mind. Anyway, so that's why we need to be having these conversations. Whether you're for or against, I'm going to sit neutral. I'm just going to present and offer some ideas on the process and what we need to do. So the increase reflects a major shift in reproductive choices. And I'm seeing egg freezing on social media and it's presented as almost like, let's go to the day spa. Bring a friend, refer a friend. And, they're not really showing you the serious implications. And there are. We need to explore what those implications are for each individual because egg freezing is not for everybody. It's a great solution and I think it's great that we've got choice, but it's not for everybody. So let's just look at egg freezing. Where did it develop and where it all began? So if we look at it, it's scientifically known as oocyte cryopreservation. It's a process that allows women to preserve their fertility by freezing and storing their eggs for future use. Now, the concept was very experimental and it began in the 1970s. Then we had the wonderful Dr. Nicole Noyes. She's an American reproductive endocrinologist in the US, and she was motivated by the plight of a close friend who had lost her fertility due to chemotherapy, which inspired her to focus on the development of egg freezing and technology. Now, she's amazing. Have a look at her. I just looked at a video of hers on egg freezing and IVF. She's wonderful to listen to. She's such a great presenter of information. I'm inspired by her, truly inspired. But the first successful pregnancy from a frozen egg was back in 1986 by an Australian team led by Dr. Christopher Chen. Now, the procedure was initially labelled experimental due to the limited safety and efficacy data. Now, clearly over the years, there's been advancement in cryopreservation techniques, especially the shift from the slow freezing to what they call vitrification. And if we look at vitrification, I love this word because, I'm a bit of a wordsmith where words come from. And if we look at vitrification, it comes from the Latin word vitrium, which means glass. So it's a fast freeze process that transforms the liquid inside your eggs into a glass-like state. So, the advancements have meant that, we've significantly improved the success rates of thawed eggs. So in 2012, we had the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, the ASRM, and they removed the experimental label from egg freezing and recognised its efficacy and safety. So that's what we need. We need to be ticking the box. We need to line up the ducks and all the ticks need to be there. So this is a good thing. Now, why? Let's look at why. Why are women freezing their eggs? Primarily, they haven't met the right person yet, or they might not be with the right person. They might not have the right partner, so to speak. They have a sense of fear, and this is sad, that they're running out of time. Fear is, I find that a lot of the media, they play on the fear, and that's the part that I dislike about the social media, is preying on women's fear. I'm about women's empowerment. So, a lot of the women that I speak to, especially the young ones that are coming into the clinic, they're all so frightened that they're running out of time. They might have different priorities. So, you might be, studying, doing multiple degrees, MBAs, master's degrees, climbing the corporate ladder. You could be traveling the world. You've got all your travel influencers traveling the world. And I was one of those people. I did all my traveling early, and I'm grateful that I went to 66 countries in all those years in my early 20s. And then you've got women that are wanting to be financially secure, or, couples that are really wanting to be financially secure because, let's face it, raising children is very expensive. And then we've got people that are worried about their egg reserve. They may have an AMH test and they think they're running out of time. We've also got the pandemic. Let's look at that. That played a big role as well in why women wanted to freeze their eggs, because we were all at home. We were all locked down. We had social distancing. So how are you supposed to meet a partner with social distancing and lockdowns? So, pandemic played a big role. So it was a big spike after the pandemic. We also see a rise in employee benefits. And so, before, most people get their fertility benefits and they're through insurance, but now we're seeing a big rise in employee benefits that cover this. So that's the incentive. Now, I honestly believe, and this is just my opinion, and I believe it's an empowering decision for women, but I don't think it's the empowerment or the revolution that you want it to be. That's in all seriousness. I'm not 100% for, and I'm not 100% against egg freezing. I'm right in the middle, right? I'm right in the middle because I support people that are going for it, and I also support people that are against it. And we're going to jump into some reasons why we're for and against. So again, I don't think it's the solution when we start to explore that you're maybe hoping for. So fundamentally, I am seeing that it's sold as an insurance policy, and it's sold to women that it is that. And it's absolutely not. It's not an insurance policy. In fact, anyone that's putting a guarantee on anything, I think that's really, that sheer promise of a guarantee of conception is really concerning. So in medical practice, especially in fields as complex and individual as fertility, it's misleading and it's often unethical to offer such guarantees. So that's my biggest gripe. Fertility treatments, you need to understand, they're highly personal and their outcomes can be influenced by so many factors. There's so many factors to consider. So it's not one insurance policy fits all. It's not. So I want you to know that it's bigger than just ripping out the eggs and putting them in ice and then carrying on with your life, because that's how we're marketed to. And you need to understand the risks, all right? Like most medical procedures, there are potential risks that women may want to consider before they freeze their eggs. So let's look at those. So some of the risks are infection to the ovary. There's the potential loss of the ovary if there's an infection. You've got an increased risk of thrombosis, which is a clot, when the hormones are used for stimulation. We've also got overstimulation of the ovaries, your ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. This happens when your ovaries, they swell and they leak fluid into your abdomen. Then we've got your risk of complication during your egg collection procedure, and there can be pelvic infection or other pelvic trauma. Now, although this risk is small and minimal, but you need to be aware of that. There is the risk that no eggs will be collected. Now, this is when it gets very disappointing, because a lot of women are riding on this hope of getting a lot of eggs collected. And some eggs may not even survive the freezing process. Some thawed eggs may not even fertilize. And then you've got the transferred embryos. They may not result in a pregnancy. So you need to go into it with your eyes open. And anyone that's not explaining the risks to you, then you need to start questioning that. That's the first thing. Understand the risks. So then it's really important that you make sure you're with the right embryologist. Very important. Lucy Lyons, she's one of my favourite embryologists in Australia. So look her up. She's amazing. You need to understand what this can potentially do to you emotionally. So I have a lot of women that come in and they think they're just going to put their eggs on ice and that their fertility is guaranteed. And I told you it's not guaranteed, because if it doesn't work and we're not getting fertilization, or they're not thawing properly, or the process isn't working, and often women are going in thinking they only need one round of IVF, when I tell people when they're going in to do a full IVF process, you need to go in for a minimum of 3 rounds, minimum. And that's even for women in their 20s. You've got to go in with that headspace. Go in for 3. So the steps, we need to understand what the steps are. So step 1, now if you look at what egg freezing, it's basically a mini IVF. It's like a half of an IVF cycle. So step 1, this is where you have your monitoring visits and your hormone injections. They will typically begin on day 2 or day 3 of your period, and that will last anywhere from 10 to 12 days. And these medications, that's just given to you like a pen, and you're doing an injection into your abdomen. So sometimes you might get some bloating. There are some side effects. Some women can get hormonally, emotional. There are those potential side effects. You need to be aware of that. Bloating is the main side effect at the site. Bruising is another one. Step 2, then you've got your egg collection. So once the fertility specialist confirms that there are enough eggs and that they've grown to a certain size, okay, you will then use a trigger shot, and that's the final step in the maturation, which is about 35 hours of that trigger shot. You'll then need to go in for your egg collection. So it's carried out under a light general anesthesia or with sedation. So this collection, you can go home usually about 1 to 2 hours afterwards. I usually advise my patients not to drive, have a rest day for the rest of the day. And, then it's literally, like I've mentioned before, it's the fast freeze, the vitrification. So then your eggs go in the freezer. So this is where they are preserved, and they may be stored for many years until you're actually ready to use them. So let's look at the costs. So in Australia, in Melbourne, at Melbourne IVF, The cost of an elective egg freezing treatment cycle is around $4,395. Then you've got your elective egg freezing costs in addition. So your additional items are first of all, your 12-month storage is $550. You've maybe got your bed for the egg collection, that's $1,395. Your anaesthetist is around $600, can be more. And then you've got your medications. This is probably the most expensive part. Your elective egg freeze medications can be anywhere up to $3,000. And then ongoing storage costs after the first year is around $300. In the US, this is where it's so different to Australia. So in the US, it's referred to as social egg freezing, but the range is, anywhere from $7,000 to $20,000 US per cycle. And again, you've got all these costs, so ultrasounds, lab, blood tests, the procedure, the storage. But, your storage is very similar to Australia, anywhere from $300 to $600 per year. And it's mostly not covered by insurance, but you may have those incentives, with your employee. So partly because it's considered a choice for delaying childbearing rather than a medical necessity. So let's look at the success rates. So egg freezing success rates. So based on the data, I'm all about data. And this is based on the data from research findings available up to and including 2016. The number of eggs needed to be frozen to reach a 75 to 80% chance of one live birth significantly increases with age. So at age 34, you're going to need approximately 10 eggs. So roughly, and usually around that age, you're getting around 10 eggs per cycle. At 37, you're going to need 20 eggs. And at 42, you're going to need around 61 eggs. So for women 40 plus who need around 61 eggs, who are getting around 6 eggs or less per cycle, it's a lot of money. So if you are looking at 10 to 15 cycles at $20,000 US, we're looking over $250,000. That's just for the egg freezing. Then when you decide to use those eggs, you've got to then consider the rounds that you're going to use to go through the full IVF procedure. And there's that price on top of that. So, we're looking at maybe, anywhere up to $500,000. So I don't know if that's ethical, that I would encourage a patient to head for egg freezing in their 40s, just knowing the toll on the body, knowing the rounds that she's going to have to go through. Personally, as a practitioner and duty of care, I don't think I would recommend that to my patients in their 40s. I think going through IVF solo with a sperm donor is a much better option. Anyway, the debate's on. If the debate's on, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate mail over these ideas, but, you've got to look at the data. We cannot escape the data. So just say you've got to you're putting your eggs on ice in your 20s and 30s. Ideally, you want to do it the earlier, the better. So that's obvious from the data. And you just need to prepare yourself physically, financially, and emotionally for the procedure. Understand that if you're thinking that one egg on ice equals one baby, you are delusional. You need to consider that you need to go in there with a treatment protocol and understand these numbers. And then when you do decide to do your IVF, this is where your preconception comes in. All right. So you're going to have to prepare for your full IVF cycle when you take them out of the freezer. So this is where your preconception care model comes into play. And I promote this as the best kept secret in the fertility industry, because you need to give yourself 90 days to prepare for an IVF cycle. Even if you're doing your egg freezing, you need to give yourself 90 days because you want to be, pulling out the best egg quality possible. And that is also determined by that preconception care. In those 90 days, your eggs, they don't undergo any deterioration or decay until they start interacting in your internal environment. And it's the internal environment. It's looking at the diet, the lifestyle, the exercise, the weight, your BMI, your stress, your environmental toxins. Like we're seeing such an exposure to phthalates, which is the plastics, BPAs, heavy metals, pesticides, parabens, smoking, cannabis. All of these environmental toxins are going to affect your egg quality, even in your 20s. So we need to go into this, whether we're doing the mini IVF for egg freezing or the IVF rounds, you need to go into it preparing the 90-day protocol. It's so important. And so, this is where Chinese medicine shines. Remember, I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine. I'm always going to throw in my medicine because I think it's a wonderful adjunct to support the IVF process, whether you're doing egg freezing or the full IVF cycle. We look at some of the data. We've got a meta-analysis in 2008. This was from the British Medical Journal. This was a meta-analysis conducted by a team of researchers led by Eric Mannheimer, and they were showing the impact of acupuncture and seeing the success rate. It improves the success rate of up to 65% when you do pre and post acupuncture. So these findings are amazing. Let's add acupuncture into the mix. So when you're doing your preconception care, I would be recommending weekly acupuncture. So combining your Chinese medicine with IVF will help regulate your hormones, especially when you're doing multiple rounds. We've got to get your hormones back regulated, especially when you're stimming and stimming and stimming. You've got to regulate, if you're doing 3 rounds, then I recommend having a break for 2 rounds. If you've not been successful in those 3 rounds, 2 rounds off, rest, relax, restore, get your hormones back in check, get your period back in check, then dive in. But I see time and time again with these IVF clinics, they're just going ka-ching, ka-ching. I had one lady, 19 rounds without a rest. And I'm like, she was just so depleted, so broken. I mean, it was just, I think, unethical to put someone through 19 rounds of cycle after cycle of IVF. It's so damaging on the system. To say that it's not damaging is a lie. Women are being lied to. You need to allow yourself to rebound. So going for 3, come out, regulate, restore, replenish, go back in for another 3, come out, jump in, jump out. So that's how I encourage and I talk to my patients. Be realistic. You've got to just realise we're not machines. It's not just ripping out those eggs at your waist that they say in these IVF clinics. This is not how we are. We are human beings, people. So the beautiful thing about combining Chinese medicine with your IVF, it's going to regulate your hormones. It's going to increase the number of follicles. It's going to improve your egg quality because we're working on all the parameters, your hormones, your emotional state. So the beautiful thing about acupuncture, it instantly works on your parasympathetic nervous system. The moment you put a needle in, boom, yin tongue, boom. I see patients, they fall asleep. Most of the time I put that needle in, yin tongue, they're going to sleep. And this process is stressful because a lot of hope is invested into this. You've invested a lot of money. So it makes sense to combine acupuncture and Chinese medicine with this. Now, the acupuncture increases the blood flow to the uterus. I love this. It increases. So that therefore, by effect, it's going to increase the lining because we want a nice thick lining. We want a healthier uterine lining. It increases the chances of implantation. We've got these, it moderates these key enzymes in your uterus. These are your cyclooxygenase, try and say that, cyclooxygenase and prostaglandins. So these are the enzymes that help reduce the uterine motility, and it's going to make your uterine lining receptive. We want those embryos to stick. All right, so acupuncture is going to help with that. It's going to release your beta endorphins, your happy hormones. So we all want to be happy during this process. And I see a lot of women sad. They're crying through this process because it's overstimulating everything. The hormones are going crazy. So we want to get you into a happy place when you're doing your IVF cycle. So I love acupuncture for the beta endorphins. It also increases the sperm count. So studies show that acupuncture increases the sperm count, the motility, and we need to have those stronger swimmers. It also prevents miscarriage. So we have Chinese herbal formulas that we will use. So you've gone through a cycle. We've got a baby on board. We've got the beautiful formula. It's called Shao Tai 1, and it helps secure the embryo. into the lining, and it helps it nestle, it's holding, it's lifting, and it's warm. Because often I'm treating a lot of women that have a lot of internal cold. We call it a cold womb. You know, if you think about it, nothing grows in ice or snow. So that's why when you do your IVF cycle, you know, we are encouraged to wear our Ugg boots or our woolen slippers and woolen socks. You want it warm feet, warm womb. So yeah, Shao Taiwan works on the warmth and that extra hold. So it's like putting your socks on. All right, you just need to remember this. I'm going to leave us with a quote by Dr. Marcel Cedars, that she's the president of the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. That's the ASRM, in the New York Times. Now, she was just quoted in September in 2022, and I want to read this publication. And it's basically saying that women are overly optimistic. I can drop the link to this Times article. Women are overly optimistic about their chances of having a baby when they freeze their eggs. It is not, as many assume, an insurance policy. The pregnancy rate, she says, is not as good as I think a lot of women think it will be. She said, I always tell my patients, there's not a baby in the freezer. There's a chance to get pregnant. Quote unquote. So I think that's a good takeaway. Let's, you know, if we've got the president of ASRM telling us that, you know, it's not the insurance policy, we go in with our eyes open. It is opening up our reproductive choices, which is great. But, you know, just go into it with your eyes and your heart and your wombs open. So thank you, ladies. Thank you for this week's meeting. And if you have any questions, please unmute yourself and we'd love to have a chat about it. Let's open up the forum. Is there any questions?
I guess, like usual, you have questions. All right, Tara, if you have a question, go ahead. It's fine.
Well, I was going to have a comment. So thank you, Dr. Tasani. I actually went into a clinic about 4 years ago with the thought that I would freeze my eggs. And of course, I was already beyond 40. And they did tell me, you know, I'm not a candidate, you know, and they explained a lot of what you were sharing, like that you would need like 60 eggs at my age. And it was, of course, very hard to hear. And then I went through this period of regret that I didn't do it sooner. And I thought, you know, I never thought that I spent so much time with my career. And, you know, I just, you know, all the things that you said in the beginning, you know, that you're choosing other things instead of building a family at that time. And plus I didn't have the partner that I wanted to build a family with. And so, but it was very nice to hear everything that you said, because now there's a feeling that it's not like I waited too long to do that. It's like, maybe that wasn't the right choice in the beginning. You know what I'm saying? Like, it all happens for a reason. And maybe it just, even if I would have done that in my 20s and 30s, you know, like that false hope that would have then resulted in a baby. Whereas, you know, because that's what it's perpetuated, right? Like you said,
yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, you just need to freeze your eggs and then everything's going to be fine, you know?
Sure.
And I was so disheartened when you know, that, oh, I waited too long. Oh, it's too late. But all of that. But yeah, it's not much of a question. It's more of like a thank you for that. Yeah.
I think it's great to have these conversations, because, you know, women need to just be informed, and you realize that, you know, no regrets. For me, it's like I deal with what we've got here now. The potential for you is that we, you know, as humans, we're designed to actually just grow one egg per cycle, right? One dominant follicle. So you haven't missed out. You have the same chances, you know, do this naturally, especially if we get the environment right. This is what I'm saying. I'm seeing women in their 40s actually healthier than women in their 30s, because they're really laser focused on, they've got their charting and which are doing, you know. Yes, you've ovulated later. That can sometimes happen, right? Can sometimes happen in the cycle. You've got to understand what happened in the early part of the cycle. So was it a stressful follicular phase? Were you not sleeping? Were you sick? There can be a lot of predispositions why you would ovulate later. There's a lot of different reasons why it might be delayed. Sometimes I will find when I'm charting with patients, they might have one good ovary and one lazy ovary. So one will ovulate really well and the other one's a bit sluggish. And that's where acupuncture is really good. It picks that up and it goes, if you're charting with your, fertility acupuncturist, they'll pick that up and they'll go, right, well, which side is it on? Is it on the left? Oh, it's the left side. Oh, liver qi stagnation. Great. We need to work on a liver supporting protocol for you. So it could be that something as simple as that. We could look at a liver supporting protocol. We could go, right, let's do that. Let's add in the things that I would do on a liver supporting protocol, or your cruciferous vegetables, or your leafy greens. I would add in, bitter greens, all the things that work on the liver and the methylation pathways, selenium, choline, all those things that help the liver methylate. Because if your liver's working well, your hormones are metabolizing and we're getting rid of those excess estrogens out of the body. So sometimes when you're ovulating late, it can be just that hormonal imbalance. So if we get the liver functioning better, can be a solution.
And that leads me to a follow-up if I can. I have been doing a lot of the liver protocol and castor oil. I've been doing the moxa. I eat really well, all organic. I have the whole slew of supplements, the antioxidants, and I have a really good plate at dinner and breakfast. And but of course, the one thing that and this is probably outside the scope of this conversation. So just to plant a seed, I have MTHFR, homozygous. Mm-hmm. So I do have a compromised methylation pathway. So that's I've always concerned about that. So, and when you said acupuncture, I, at this point, haven't found a fertility acupuncturist that I've been going to, but I am using an acupuncture pen. It's called the Pointer Excel 2.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, I was going to ask your opinion as to whether you think that's as effective or a good,
It's always going to be effective. Is it going to be as effective with somebody that can design your protocol based on your differential diagnosis? No. It's not the same. If you're working under the guise of a coach like me, that I could actually give you the points and work with that, then yes.
Okay. So that's helpful because, because I bought the pen and, my boyfriend and I have been working on each other, going through different points, but of course it it's a little bit of shot in the dark. It's not really customized to me specifically yet.
So that's the beauty of
but I wanted to see whether it's actually do you need the needle or is the needle needle?
I teach my patients this point. I'll teach you this one now. Lao Gung, second finger, right? When you're on the crease here, okay? This is pericardium 8. We call it Lao Gung. It's the labor palace point. It's the fire point on your pericardium, right? Now, I love this point. If you press it, it can induce a sweat. But I love this point. You can rub your hands like that pen, and you can actually use your hands. These are your Reiki hands. This is your hands on healing, but it comes from your pericardium 8 that we're activating. So you activate the hand and you can put them down on the womb space. So you can actually do hand to womb activation. I'll actually get hand to heart, hand to womb activation. So you're getting that beautiful conduit between the heart shen and then the womb space. There's a meridian that connects the heart with the uterus called the bowel mine. And so I get my patients to go to sleep with this hand activation. And they do it every night. And they just do their dream. They literally talk to their little soul that's coming through and visualize their future time and place where they're with their newborn or in utero, and they use all of their senses and they move towards that. And I get them to do that. So, hand activation, pen activation. Look, the acupuncture needles, they're super powerful. I always say, stand aside or lose a limb. It's so potent. I mean, I got
you could adjust it. It's like if you have it all the way up, you're like, yeah.
When I got into acupuncture myself, I'll tell you my story. I had a really bad water skiing accident and I couldn't walk. So they said I may not walk again. And I had acupuncture, which helped realign all the nerves and the spine. I had a posterior bulge, like literally. So I had one leg longer than the other from the accident. And it was acupuncture that completely, like, how do these needles do this? But literally realign the spine. It was just everything came back into alignment, and I went, right, I am studying this. And it was the last thing I tried. Okay, I tried chiros, physios, osteopaths, kinesiologists, GPs wanted to give me opiates. And I'm like, no, thank you. So I did acupuncture as a last resort. It was miraculous. It changed my life. So I started in, working with sports, elite athletes, because I worked structurally with the acupuncture. But then my passion developed into the fertility niche because all these athletes were losing their periods, and I was then having them wanting to have babies, and I was having to correct all of this fertility stuff. Yeah. And so I naturally just came into this fertility. Never thought I'd be specializing in fertility, but I love this space now. Yeah. I love it. But, if we can find an acupuncturist, perhaps after this call, if you're in my school group or my Facebook group, if you are.
I am.
You are? Okay.
I am.
Then DM me and I will find an acupuncturist for you in your area. Be great.
Okay, great.
A good person and somebody that is actually, has the right credentials, because I feel there's a lot of charlatans out there.
Exactly. That's exactly. And that's why I haven't been able to find someone where it's just people say acupuncturist and right. Do they really? Yeah.
That's right. And they give us a bad name. But when you get a really good one, it's magic. It's like a good, your mechanic.
A good masseuse, a good
when you get a good one, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing. Thank you for shining a light on that, Tara. And now you have every chance to do this naturally at this age. You haven't missed out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm reading your book, and I'm following all the things. I did your master course. Yeah.
Oh, well, wonderful. Yeah. Fantastic. This is great news. Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. Darcy.
So at the beginning, you list a lot of symptoms that you can have as a result of doing the egg freezing. Was this on the part of the person that, like retrieval, or was this on, those symptoms for the...
Because if you're doing egg freezing or you're doing a full IVF cycle, you're going through the retrieval process. That's the egg collection. So you're going to get those symptoms, whether you're doing egg freezing or a full IVF cycle. So, yeah.
Most of the symptoms would come from the retrieval rather than the implantation of it, right? Okay. Yeah. I think that was all, really. I had a question on.
Darcy, I love your questions. I love seeing your face. Are there any more questions before I close this meeting? Renata? Or Ruth, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, I just had a question. When you're, this is a massive amount of eggs that you're saying need to be retrieved.
Yeah.
How many does a woman normally have?
Well, it depends. It's age dependent, and it depends on what your AMH is. It also there's so many factors at play, so it's not like one size fits all on average. So if you're in your early 20s, on average, you're going to get around 10.
I guess in your lifetime, how many eggs do you make?
Oh, how do you make? So we're born with about one. Like this data's always changing. So we're born with about when we're actually conceived, it's about 6 million. When we're actually birthed, we are born with 1 to 2 million eggs. Yeah. By the time we start menstruating, I think it's about 500,000, of which 10,000 are left when we hit menopause. So we don't actually run out of eggs. It's about the environment and the quality. Yeah.
Okay. So we never really run out, because the reason I ask is because we have patient.
One last thing too, Ruth. There's new emerging data that we are now producing eggs like men. They're seeing it in a study of rats. And so if you want that data, I'm more than happy to DM that to you, Ruth. So if you DM me, I can drop you those studies, because I know you love the data.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's great because it gives women this inspiration, because we are sold that we're running out of eggs and that we're running out of time, and you don't. We've got to get the environment right, the mindset, the lifestyle, get rid.
Right.
I mean, these endocrine disruptors, because we don't have regulations around it. We've got plastics everywhere. I love these countries that are getting rid of plastic bottles. We need to get on board with that. Finally, after all these years, we've got paper bags coming back in our supermarkets. But you look at the oceans, they're full of plastic. You look at what we're doing to the sea and the ocean. We're no different. So we need to clean up these endocrine disrupting chemicals. They're the biggest obstacle in this process. Bigger than Ben-Hur.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get on a rant, but I get passionate about this.
The reason I asked that is because we had a patient and they said she has, I think it was an IBS, but they're like, she has no more eggs left. And I guess they meant really frozen eggs. I was thinking it was her own body, like they had scraped the last one off.
Oh, no.
Oh, well, okay. So that's why I'm asking. The other thing I did want to say, just as a positive thing or a kind of cool story, is a couple of years ago, I went into a patient room. I did postpartum and went into a patient room, and she was like elder. She was 51 and she had this baby. And I'm like, what the heck happened? And she was a nurse from another country. She has a thick accent. I don't know where she was from, but anyway, so it was a little bit hard to hear her story, but she told me that it was egg retrieval and that it had been 21 years earlier. She said this baby had a 21-year-old sister.
Really?
That was from the same time. Isn't that amazing? So she's 51. And I guess she had 3 eggs left, and they were saying, it's time. These things are getting old. We need to either dispose of them or implant them. And so she went for it. She says, I prayed and it just felt right that I should have another child. And I think there were 2 that weren't good or something. I don't know whether they implanted all of them. But anyway, she got this little daughter. So now within this past year, she is showing me pictures of her little 2-year-old daughter. I don't remember that it's her at all. I mean, I had no recollection that this was a patient. And she's showing me, but she came back as a nursing instructor for this little college that we have. And, they come in through clinicals. And so she had these students, and she told me, she says, I remember you. And I said, oh, well, then I remember you, because this was this cool story, because I'm like, she's showing me pictures of her 2-year-old daughter. And I'm thinking, gosh, you look old to have a 2-year-old. Well, yeah, she is. Yeah. But it was a really cool story. It was fun to get to meet up with her again. So hope.
Miss Hope, and what a beautiful story to finish on. So really, thank you for sharing that, because I hope I haven't poo-pooed the egg freezing and IVF process. There are these beautiful stories of completion and people completing their families, and so it's to go into it just with our eyes open. Like I said, our eyes, our hearts, our wombs open. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you for this. That was very, very interesting.
Please jump in. I'm doing these weekly. If there's any topics you would like me to cover each week, but feel free to DM me, and I'll do the research and just do a presentation for you. So we'll see you this time next week, ladies. Thank you for joining me again. It's always a pleasure to talk to all, to hear your feedback. Don't ever be shy to jump on the call. Women learn from your questions. I learn from your questions. So I'm going to love and leave you, and I will see you again next week. Sweet good night.